This is Lord Buddha talking, by the way. I mean, it's me talking, but I'm quoting. This is in quotes. It's the Lord Buddha talking in the scripture. This is Buddhist Books Podcast, episode 201, Tipiṭaka, part 127, in which we will continue reading Bhikkhunivibhaṅga Pācittiya, the rules of expiation for nuns. If this is your first time seeing me and you would like to start at the beginning of the Tipiṭaka, feel free to click right there. For those who are returning, you might notice either a little bit of a difference in sound quality, or there's this big microphone in my face, which you haven't seen since I was sitting at the desk, looking from a different angle before I decided to start filming these down here in front of the bookshelf. Looks very nice, very aesthetic, I think. That's because I forgot to charge the phone that I normally plug the clip mic into, and I was getting ready to record and realized that phone's at 8%, so I had to improvise. So I have two yoga blocks stacked vertically on top of each other, so as long as I don't touch this, it won't come tumbling down. A little bit of the behind the scenes, I'm sure you wanted. By the way, the Tipiṭaka playlist, that is about 100 episodes of rules for monks, and then begin the rules for nuns. If you would like to start at the beginning of the rules for nuns, you can click right there and do so. Otherwise, we will pick up right where we left off last time in the rules for nuns, and we're getting very close to the end of the third book. So yeah, you might notice this is episode 201. If you don't remember episode 200, that was divisible by 10, so that means it was a Padmasambhava episode. If you would like to hear about the life and liberation of Padmasambhava, who some call the second Buddha, click here. But if you're here for the first Buddha, or, then here we are. You're going to hear him directly quoted more than once in this episode, but it's not as interesting as it sounds. Are you, all right? You ready for this? I'm not selling it very well, am I? I will go ahead and begin the recital. Expiation, Pācittiya, 81. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove at the squirrel's feeding place. Now at that time the nun Tulananda, thinking, I will ordain a probationer, that being in quotes, quote, I will ordain a probationer, end quote, having had monks who were elders convened, having seen sumptuous solid foods and soft foods, saying, quote, Masters, I will not ordain the probationer yet, end quote. Having dismissed the monks who were elders, having had Devadatta, Kokalika, Kata Moraka, Tisaka. By the way, if you're wondering about these cartoons, then welcome to Buddhist Books Podcast. And also feel free to check out this episode in which we run through the Tipiṭaka Rogues Gallery, the title of the video, as you can see. In other words, all the monks and nuns who've done naughty things. And, they each get a cartoon character so that when we talk about them, the cartoon pops up and it helps us to remember them. And it's fun. And since they're naughty monks and nuns and not saints or Buddhas, I think it's safe to poke fun a little. I don't think it's disrespectful, if that makes sense. Okay, comment below if you disagree or if you agree. Just comment below. It helps the YouTube algorithm to promote this video further out when people comment or click like. So, anyway, the son of the Lady Konda. Yeah, these are I'm pretty sure these are the schismers. So they're going to be, I think, the Ninja Turtles, if I'm not mistaken. So Devadatta, Kokalika, Kata Mora Katisaka, the son of the Lady Kanda and Samudadatta. These four schismers convened. She ordained the probationer. Okay, what is she up to? So the nun Tulananda tells the normal monks, you know what, I'm not going to ordain this probationer, and then brings together these schismers, these followers of, I forget his name, the bad cousin of Lord Buddha, this guy. Anyway, and she's going to ordain her probationer with them present. All right, I'll keep reading. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can the Lady Tulananda ordain a probationer by showing favoritism to, parentheses, monks, and parentheses, placed on probation, end quote, 3 dots. You know, I think that the nun Tulananda, if I recall correctly, she was repeating the false teachings of, I think it was this same person. Editor Edward, chime in if I'm wrong, but if you don't see Editor Edward right now, then that means that I am not wrong about that. So she was repeating the false doctrine, if you will, or the doctrine that was contrary to the Buddha's doctrine, which was a doctrine being perpetuated by a particular monk in Buddha's order, and, you know, he wasn't having that. So he said, don't do that, or you get not kicked out, but a formal meeting, which is, you don't want a formal meeting. That's bad. Okay, anyway, I'll keep reading. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks? This is Lord Buddha talking, by the way. I mean, it's me talking, but I'm quoting. This is in quotes. It's the Lord Buddha talking in the scripture. Okay, quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that the nun Tulananda ordained a probationer by showing favoritism to, parentheses, monks, and parentheses, placed on probation? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote. Okay. She was not only favoring monks that were on probation at the time that she's doing this. She's like, obviously doing, this is what they call schismatic behavior when you're in a cult that takes itself too seriously. All right, that's what they call that when you're in that situation. Don't ask me how I know that. Anyway, I'll keep reading. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, this, by the way, this is the first time we've had the wicked stepmother on the same screen at the same time with the Ninja Turtles. I just want to point that out. Okay. Yes, saying, quote, how, monks, can the nun Tulananda, 3 dots, parentheses, monks, and parentheses, placed on probation? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, and parentheses, pleased, 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should ordain a probationer by showing favoritism to, parentheses, monks, and parentheses, placed on probation, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. Now, this does sound like a Tulananda-specific rule, but I can see how this situation could come up again in the future. Not very often, but if you had a similar kind of situation where there were some monks that were like trying to start their own spin-off order, and then you have a nun on their side who only wants to ordain nuns with the bad monks, and not with normal monks. That could come up again, and probably did many times, actually, given the scale of history and the fact that I've seen that at least twice. Maybe not specifically, but things like this. Whatever means 3 dots. None means 3 dots. In 2 more episodes, we'll do the flashback again. By showing favoritism to parentheses monks and parentheses placed on probation means to a company that has arisen. All right. Probationer means 3 dots, parentheses C, 80, and parentheses 3 dots, and an offensive wrongdoing for the group and for the woman teacher. There is no offense if she ordains her if the company has not risen. If she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. So if you're a nun and you want to convene monks to ordain your favorite, probationer, a nun, but this monk here, was looking creepily at her, and that monk there smells funny, and they were all going to go anyway, and you say, you know what, we're not going to do it right now, why don't you guys go ahead and go. And then 4 other monks that you happen to be friends with, but they're not actively trying to foment schism in the order, they're just other monks, then you can say, hey, I want to ordain her. Is it cool? Don't tell those monks. That's fine. According to the rule, that's not forbidden. It's only in the specific situation where you have, I think they were the followers of Devadatta. Am I right? I don't know. Or was he one of the ones that... Oh yeah, no, he was one of the ones that was gathered together. So this isn't just the, you already know. You saw it. That wasn't just the Ninja Turtles, but also Jafar, I want to say. I'll keep reading. Expiation, Pācittiya. 82. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery, their usual hangout. I added that part because it's true. Now at that time, nuns ordained every year. There were not sufficient dwellings. People, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns ordain every year? There are not sufficient dwellings. End quote. Nuns heard these people who, 3 dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns ordain every year? End quote, leaving out the other part about not having enough dwellings for some reason. I'm predicting that the rule is going to be about ordaining every year, regardless of dwellings, which is unfortunate because the monks don't have a rule like this. Anyway, I'll keep reading. 3 dots. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that nuns ordain every year? End quote. I was right. Quote, it is true, Lord. End quote. The Enlightened One, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can nuns ordain every year? It is not monks for pleasing those who are not, parentheses yet, and parentheses pleased. 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should ordain every year, there is an offensive expiation, end quote. Now I have a question. What if a nun ordains 2 years in a row? At what point is it determined that she's doing it every year? The 2nd year in a row? Or the 3rd year in a row, seeing a pattern? Or the 4th year in a row? I don't mean to stir up. I'm just saying the rule could be slightly more clear. Whatever means 3 dots. None means 3 dots. Every year means annually. I would have thought that annually means every year, because that's usually how definitions work, but it was a different time. 6th century before Common Era. Should ordain means 3 dots, and an offensive wrongdoing for the group and for the woman teacher. It's a different time. They said things like woman teacher, the 60s. There is no offense if she ordains in alternate parentheses years, end parentheses, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. All right. Question. If she can ordain every 2 years, is there a limit to the number of nuns she can ordain at the same time? Or are the ordinations only done one at a time? Because you're severely limiting the order's ability to grow if it's only one at a time. I'm just saying, maybe that was the point. He didn't want it to suddenly go from 200 nuns to 20,000 nuns, because then whatever evolves out of that isn't going to much resemble the original 200. I get it. Expiation, Pācittiya, 83. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now, at that time, the nuns ordained 2, parentheses, probationers, end parentheses, in 1 year. Sidebar, I think my question from the previous one is about to be answered. Okay. As before, there were not sufficient dwellings. The obvious solution here is to build more dwellings. Unless the point is but nature, and we don't want to be builders of apartments. There's this, here's some video footage. There's me meditating in a cell of a Buddhist monk back in Ashoka days. So if you were in a cave dwelling like that had been carved out, and you didn't actually physically have enough room to be ordaining lots of people, then 1 every 2 years might be sufficient, because that might give people, I don't know what the drop-off rate, what the rate of monks that were just I can't handle it, enough, and just got up and left. I don't know how often that happened, or how often monks passed away, or, nuns, whatever the case may be. So I don't know, maybe it was to keep the same number of nuns, but not have it decrease or increase, or have it increase very slowly, gradually. All right, Expiation, Pācittiya. Did we finish that one? As before, 3 dots spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns ordain 2 parentheses probationers, end parentheses, in 1 year? As before, there are not sufficient dwellings, end quote. Nuns heard these people who, 3 dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, 3 dots, parentheses, it's the same as, Pācittiya 82. Remember Pācittiya 82? All of this is the same. End parentheses, 3 dots, this rule of training. Whatever nun should ordain 2, parentheses, probationers, end parentheses, in 1 year, there is an offense of expiation. Whatever means 3 dots, none means 3 dots. 1 year means 1 year. Should ordain 2, parentheses, probationers, end parentheses, means. Should confer the upasampada orientation on 2, parentheses, probationers, end parentheses. All that, I bet, can you imagine if there were 3 or 4 probationers and they were all some of them that were were made probationers more recently, or getting it more than the ones that have been a long time. Oh, I can imagine the soap operas, the drama. Somebody should make a TV series about the drama that would come up in a situation like that, about who has to wait 2 years, who gets to be a nun next year, and all the perks and privileges you get for being a nun versus not being one, and the rules you have to follow. And I'd watch it, at least for a few minutes. Expiation, Pācittiya, where were we? If she thinks, quote, I will ordain 2, parentheses, probationers, end parentheses, end quote, and looks about for a group, or 3 dots, parentheses, the same as in 61, or you remember 61? It was 21 Pācittiya ago. It's the same as that, says Miss Horner, the translator of these sacred scriptures. End parentheses, 3 dots. There is no offense of wrong. There is an offense. That's an important difference. There is an offense of wrongdoing for the group and for the woman teacher. There is no offense if she ordains in alternate years, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. What? The eighth division, that on a maiden. Oh, the division, that on a maiden. The maiden was a while ago. So now that was a division of like 13 or something odd. Now we're moving on to a different division that's coming at 84. It makes me wonder if this section's going to end soon. I don't normally look ahead. I'm just curious. Yeah, we're going to run out of Pācittiya. The highest number, again, I don't normally do this, is 96. So we're about to read 84. Now we know how many more Pācittiya there are. Who knows? Maybe we'll finish by the end of next episode. Expiation, Pācittiya, 84. 3 dots, at one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, the group of 6 nuns used sunshades and sandals. People, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns use sunshades and sandals? Like women householders who enjoy the pleasures of the senses. End quote. Nuns heard these people, who 3 dots, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can this group of 6 nuns use sunshades and sandals? End quote, 3 dots. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, 3 dots and sandals, end quote, quote, it is true, Lord, end quote. The Enlightened One, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how monks can 3 dots and sandals? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, parentheses, yet, end parentheses, pleased, 3 dots. This rule of training, whenever nun should use a sunshade and sandals, there is an offense of expiation. End quote. Thank you, guys. Gender neutral, ladies, I don't know. Friends, naughty nuns, I don't know. What's the best way to address the group of 6 nuns? Thank you, the group of 6 nuns. I'll keep reading. And thus this rule of training for nuns came to be laid down by the Lord. At that time a certain nun came to be ill. There was no comfort for her without a sunshade and sandals. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, monks, I allow a sunshade and sandals to a nun who is ill. And thus, monks, let the nuns set forth this rule of training. Whatever nun who is not ill should use a sunshade and sandals, there is an offense of expiation. End quote. Whatever means 3 dots, nun means 3 dots. Who is not ill means for whom there is comfort without a sunshade and sandals. Who is ill means for whom there is not comfort without a sunshade and sandals. Sunshade means there are 3 parentheses kinds of, end parentheses, sunshades. White sunshades, sunshade of rushes, sunshade of leaves, fastened at the middle, fastened to a rim. Should use means if she uses parentheses them, and parentheses even once, there is an offense of expiation. If she thinks that she is not ill when she is not ill, parentheses, and parentheses, uses a sunshade and sandals, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether she is not ill, 3 dots. If she thinks that she is ill when she is not ill, 3 dots, offense of expiation. If she uses a sunshade, parentheses, but, and parentheses, not sandals, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she uses sandals, parentheses, but, and parentheses, not a sunshade, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is not ill when she is ill, 3 dots. You know, I know it's going to say offensive wrongdoing, but there's no reason to expect anybody to know that it's going to say an offensive wrongdoing, but it is. If she's ill, but she thinks she's not ill, and she wears sandals and a sunshade, and it's an offensive wrongdoing. It's not quite an offensive expiation because she's ill, but it's not a wrongdoing because she thinks she's doing an offensive expiation. So there's wrongdoing and that she's intending, right? So like if you're like thinking, like if you drop a brick and you hear a certain sound that leads you to think that you successfully killed the guy that you were trying to kill, but you didn't, it actually hit a bag of trash. Like, you're in trouble if somebody finds out that you dropped a brick looking down there going, okay, there he is, ah. But you're not in as much trouble as you would have been had you succeeded. It's not exactly the same as that, but it's in the ballpark. Not really in the ballpark either. Never mind. I'll just keep reading. If she is in doubt as to whether she is ill, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is ill when she is ill, there is no offense. There is no offense if she is ill. If she uses parentheses them and parentheses in a monastery. Oh. Wow. Oh, sorry. In monastery precincts, if there are accidents, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. I just see how this is all set up to result in beautiful monastery campuses. There was a point where the king had a lotus garden, and nuns got in trouble for going to the king's lotus garden because it was like decadent. But you were allowed to like look at lotuses from the monastery, or you were allowed to look at a lotus from the monastery. Now it's saying you can't use sunshade and sandals unless you're in a monastery. So I mean, if I were a nun back then, or 100, 200, 500 years later, I'd be like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's get a plot of land, make a lotus garden over there, and bring on the sunshade and sandals. And we'll go out every day and we'll stand in the lotus garden with our sunshade and sandals. And it's not against the rules. Maybe that's how Mahayana came to be. All right. Actually, maybe it is, like all the people finding all the loopholes. No. We haven't gotten there yet. I'm not an expert in any way in Mahayana. We'll get there. I've got some of the sutras behind me. Once we're done with this, we'll get into it after I read this book about the Greek Buddhist that was pre-Mahayana, so I were like right at the beginning of Mahayana. All right, finished with that one. Let's read one more, shall we? Expiation, Pācittiya 85. At one time, the Enlightened One, the Lord, was staying at Savatthi in the Jeta Grove in Anathapindika's monastery. Now at that time, the group of 6 nuns went in a vehicle. People, 3 dots, spread it about, saying, quote, how can these nuns go in a vehicle? Like women householders who enjoy the pleasures of the senses, end quote. So I hope that the nuns these days, the Theravadan nuns, comment below if you're a Theravadan nun, and let me know what you're doing on YouTube, and also if you're allowed to go in a vehicle. And if so, how do you... Never mind. Maybe the rule isn't followed anymore. That'd be my guess. Because going in a vehicle, that'd be very limiting. Okay, end quote. Or maybe you can emphasize, we're not going like women householders who enjoy the pleasures of the senses. We're going like nuns on our way to the airport because we're supposed to go see something. I don't know. All right. Nuns heard these people who, spread it about. Those who were modest nuns, spread it about, saying, quote, how can this group of 6 nuns go in a vehicle? This one. End quote. Quote, is it true, as is said, monks, that the group of 6 nuns went in a vehicle? End quote. Quote, it is true, Lord, end quote. The enlightened one, the Lord, rebuked them, saying, quote, how, monks, can this group of 6 nuns go in a vehicle? It is not, monks, for pleasing those who are not, yet, and pleased. This rule of training. Whatever nun should go in a vehicle, there is an offense of expiation, end quote. Thank you, madams. And thus this rule of training for nuns came to be laid down by the Lord. Now at that time, a certain nun came to be ill. She was not able to go on foot. They told this matter to the Lord. He said, quote, I allow, monks, for a vehicle for a nun who is ill. End quote. And thus, monks, that's not an end quote, that's a footnote. And thus, monks, this rule of training. Whatever nun who is not ill should go in a vehicle. There is an offense of expiation. End quote. Whatever means none means Not ill means she is able to go on foot. Ill means she is not able to go on foot. Vehicle means a cart, a carriage, a wagon, a chariot, a palanquin, or a sedan chair. Okay, so they didn't say a Toyota. They didn't say, so, all right. Should go means if she goes even once, there is an offense of expiation. It reminds me, there was this whole thing. If you're interested, I have another thing called Meccan Revelations, reciting. The point is, there was no coffee. Coffee wasn't popular in the 700s, so it wasn't forbidden in the Quran. So when coffee came around, each caliphate had to decide, get together and have a serious conversation about whether this should be forbidden or not. And, different groups decided differently. Okay, where were we? Should go means if she goes even once, there is an offense of expiation. If she thinks that she is not ill when she is not ill, and goes in a vehicle, there is an offense of expiation. If she is in doubt as to whether she is not ill, actually that's 4 dots. If she thinks that she is ill when she is not ill, 3 dots. Offense of expiation. If she thinks that she is not ill when she is ill, there is an offense of wrongdoing. Again, if she is in doubt as to whether she is ill, there is an offense of wrongdoing. If she thinks that she is ill when she is ill, there is no offense. There is no offense if she is ill, if there are accidents, if she is mad, if she is the first wrongdoer. Okay. That's where we'll finish for today. And we'll pick up right where we left off tomorrow. And we'll keep on reading until one day we finish the Vinaya Piṭaka. And then we can get to the good part. The teachings of the Lord Buddha. So check back in about a year, and we might have gotten there by then. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please do give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you're on the podcast, then again, you can subscribe to the podcast. And I will go ahead and do the closing. I hope you're doing well. to the north and to the south, to the east and to the west. To the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace.